I'm your hostess, Paulette Henson. Today is Saturday, November 13th, 2021. Welcome to the show. Today, we are going to continue our conversation on educating our kids and how they're doing now that they're back in classroom, how it's affected their education with regards to being out of classroom for almost 2 years. I got an opportunity to interview a longtime friend who is an educator, and she gave me some firsthand knowledge of her experiences as an educator and some really helpful tips for families that are possibly having issues with their kids in school. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss B. Please give us a synopsis of, who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, so that I don't date myself, I will just say it this way. I have a whole lot of years in human resources, and then also coupled with experience in higher education and now in the K through 12 environment, working in a middle school classroom. So lots of years in education and a lot of years in hiring and recruiting and terminating and, doing all the interesting things that are required in a human resources environment as well.
Awesome. So you talk about you've pretty much been teaching different levels of people all the way. So now you started with adults and now you've moved to children. So I know this is a little bit out of the scope of the questioning, but which one do you like best?
I like children best because the behaviors that you see with children are behaviors you expect from children. Some of the behaviors that you see with adults you don't expect, and so children, you have a lot more opportunity with them to kind of help mold them and help them to get where they need to be. Adults are kind of set where they're at, and they come with a lot of resistance. And so, but I enjoyed both, quite frankly, because I had success in the higher education environment. I've got students that stay in touch with me today, and those who, quite frankly, not to pat my own back, but actually have said that because of my teaching and the lessons, the things that they learned, they were able to kind of apply those things to help them find employment, also employing them in their current positions. So, I'm quite proud of that. And in this with the kids, it's night and day. I mean, that's a reality. It is definitely night and day, but there is a link to them. So hopefully in our questioning or our discussion today, I'll be able to link that for everyone.
Yes, awesome. So with this show, I have really sort of focused on education and really trying to reach our youth or anyone that is, at a crossroads where they want to move their knowledge forward. They want to get promoted, or they want their kids to be in a better position to learn. Sometimes, from what I'm hearing in discussions, that schools and different communities don't have those resources for children, and we see that it's really affecting. It was already a problem prior to the pandemic, and honestly I think it's gotten worse, or the pandemic revealed even more problems within our education systems. And so with that, I do have some questions for you. And the first one being is, what do you see in our education system that really sealed the deal for you to become an educator for our younger students for K through 12?
perfect, because that's the connection I wanted to make. In working in higher education, what I did see is that the students I encountered, both in the for-profit environment and nonprofit environment, um, they didn't have the skills to be prepared for college. Many of them had not been required to read, really struggled with reading. Most of them, if not all, struggled with writing. And they just were not familiar with it. And I will say to you, having worked in the for-profit environment, I don't like to give them a bad name, because the ones where I worked, and many of the people I worked with were people of color, we took it and made it our personal mission to ensure that our children of color, which happen to be primarily what entered a for-profit college, because those same children were not admitted to your traditional state colleges or into universities such as, your state universities. And so they would go to these for-profits that cost mounds of money to get in there. And some of them were shoddy, but I will say for the ones that I worked with, we saw the need. We saw where these kids were way behind. And so we were doing extra work. We were doing extra to bring them up to the levels they needed, and, taking them from there, helping them to learn what it was going to be necessary in order for them to move forward and advance and obtain careers. And many of them have been quite successful to do so. I'm happy to say, but I must tell you, it definitely starts at home, and it starts in the village. It starts at the beginning. I know with my kids, and maybe even with yours, I had 2 boys, and I started with my kids before they could ever speak. I started with flashcards. I showed them their alphabet. I showed them their numbers, and was working with them every day and having them simply point, what letter is A versus C or D or something to that effect. I read to my kids. And then as they were able to speak, I had my kids reading to me, and I would read with them and make sure that they were doing that. Something I found interesting in my current teaching role is that kids didn't even know what nursery rhymes were. And I thought that was the oddest thing. I mean, I grew up with Jack and Jill. I mean, they had not heard of those things. Aesop fables, and I'm sorry about that. Aesop fables and things of that sort. They had not, they simply had not been exposed to those things. And let me go further to say, though, many of our families are, trying to survive on 2 income households. So that's very different than, when I was coming up, or even people before me, where it was mom was at home nurturing the kids, and the father was out there doing the work. We have now a lot of single income households where it's maybe a single mom, or a single parent, could be a single dad. And then we also have 2 parents that maybe have multiple children, and they're just trying to keep food on the table, no less trying to make sure that their kids are taken care of. So I do get that. And this is certainly not blaming on the parents, but there are things that you can do to ensure that your kids have the opportunity to read to you, and you be participating in what's going on with your kids. You can have your kids record themselves reading, and then you can listen to it and say, oh, Johnny, Carol, whatever, that was great. Mommy is so proud of you. Let's take a look at some of the words, or leave them a message and say, these are some of the things that I heard that maybe you can work on, or let them, you can go online. There's lots of free resources for parents. You can print out sheets if you have a printer, or you can do it online and have the kid do, work that you can look at your leisure. But there are things that we can do. A lot of times our parents, particularly in our Hispanic families, we've got older siblings that are working with the kids. And that's great if that older sibling is reading at level, but chances are they're not. One of the most heartbreaking stories that I have from my middle school experience is I had a Caucasian student, a young male, who we were doing an icebreaker. It was a bingo game. And, the rule was that you needed to ask the person, hey, do you have a sibling? Or whatever they saw in their bingo square. And so he came over to me and he said, are you any of these? And I said, well, you need to ask me which one. And he said, never mind. And I said, no, come on back. Come on back. I can tell you, I'm certainly one of these. And I said, just pick one and read it to me. He goes, I can't read. And and he was an 8th grader.
Oh.
And he was sincere. He could not read. He cannot read words on the screen, words on a page. He can't read. And I immediately thought to myself, how are you in the 8th grade and you can't read?
That's what
But
I'm
he's
thinking.
not by himself. And that's the sad part. We've got many children who are absolutely illiterate. And, you know, you mentioned the pandemic. I don't know if it's contributory. I know it's contributory, but I won't say it's responsible. Our kids were behind before the pandemic. This just made it worse, like you said. They missed 2 years of education. And while, you know, just to have parents understand, the teachers and the administrators, our hands are tied by the law. The law requires us to teach your children at grade level, regardless of their reading levels. And so what that means is you might have a child who cannot read or is reading at kindergarten, maybe even 1st grade, but they're in the 8th grade. We have to teach them 8th grade curriculum. And you say to yourself, but they can't read it. That's correct. And the reality is, just because they can't read it doesn't mean they can't learn it. So they can learn it here, but quite frankly, when it comes to writing about it, if your vocabulary bank is empty, what are you going to draw from to write or to formulate a sentence, no less a paragraph? And so all of those components are required in order for you to successfully make it through school. And so many of these kids become frustrated. You're seeing anger problems. You're seeing a lot of fighting in the school for the most ridiculous reasons. But I personally think, and it's just all my opinion, that a lot of this has to do with the frustration these children have with they don't feel smart enough. You know, kids feel they're dumb. You've got kids feeling suicidal. Of course, that goes into bullying and all those kinds of things. But in talking about the academics, imagine if you couldn't read and you couldn't write and you're in a classroom and this teacher is speaking to you, but you don't know what the heck she's talking about or he's talking about, because it's like sending you to Germany and asking you to come back and report what they've said and you don't speak German. It doesn't make sense. And so parents, they just truly need to try to start being involved. PTA, school site councils, get involved if you can, if you're home. I get it if you work. Send a proxy, send someone, an aunt, an uncle, grandma, grandpa, send someone that goes in. For our Hispanic brothers and sisters, if you don't speak English, some of our schools have English classes or Spanish classes to kind of help transition you so that you can support your kids. There are those things out there. Parents need to know and understand. Ask your school. If you go to the PTA meetings, that's your voice. If you're not happy with where your child is, say something. But don't sit back and think that the school is going to do something about it, because they're not. They're not. And it's not because they don't want to. It's because they either don't have the resources or because we're just following the law. And the law is set up against our children. Education historically was never intended for children of color. It was not intended for children of color. It wasn't until white elites decided that they needed someone to do the work. And so they needed them to have a level of education that allowed them to work and support them. And that is the only reason we've been permitted to get an education. And so now that that's there, now that the gate is open, take advantage of it. Learn it, get in there, get engaged, desire it, and want it for your kids. Kids, if you're listening, want it for yourself. Teach yourself to read. Get a Dr. Seuss book. There's no shame in it. If you don't know how to read, start with Dr. Seuss. Start with little Dick and Jane books and teach yourself to read. Because without it, what we're looking at is joblessness, homelessness, and prison. And right now, they've got privatized prison systems waiting for you. They're calling them bed and breakfast. And
Mm,
they are looking at third grade reading scores. If you're not reading at level at third grade, the reality for you is likely one of those three choices.
mm. You
And
know,
that's scary. It scares me. And that is
it's
why I
very
entered the
scary.
K through 12.
Wow, it's very scary. And you mentioned a lot of points there. One that brings a thought to mind is, really parents getting involved, and that is key. I know that people are working, but you have to find some time, something, even if you can take off 30 minutes early to pick up your child or attend their school function. Um, being active as much as possible within the school. I think that um, a lot of parents, you have to take it seriously. All of those parent teacher meetings, even down to bookstore sales, buying books for your kids, not so much of the electronic stuff, but kids, even if they're looking at pictures with a couple of words.
Yes.
um, I used to, I had one child who loved to read and the other one didn't, not so much. So what I did was, to get him to read, was I knew he loved cars. And so I bought every book about cars because I knew he would pick it up and look at it. And then he would start reading more because he would be more interested. And so sometimes we have to come up with ideas, because kids are resistant. Sometimes they don't want to, they rather play this game for, 8 hours, or they're really not even playing outside anymore. I mean, that's a whole nother subject. But because the computer has taken over, and it's like, you would think that there would be more programs developed, even in the game industry, to help our kids to read. I mean, how
Yeah,
hard
but
is it
that's
to,
again, that's the system is not designed to help our children. The system
right?
is designed to incarcerate our children.
And that's what we have to be mindful of as parents, um, all the way down to, if there's a problem at school, you're going to have problems with teachers sometimes. You have to know how to address who to go to, if your teacher is doing something that you're not happy with, or maybe you feel like the teacher, is picking on your child in some way. Instead of, you have to go through a principal, you have to go through a superintendent. There are channels where you can go. The other option, or the other topic that you mentioned, was really a, that just honed in for me, was the fact that kids are, they're getting passed along even though they're not ready. And in my day, in our day, that wasn't the case. You couldn't go to the next grade. So what has happened between then and now? Why are we passing kids on that still can't read, that they're not ready to go to that next grade?
It's an excellent question. Um, the the school system is set up to filter children through. Okay, so if your child gets straight F's, your child will go to the next grade. It is up to you, the parent, to request that your child be held back. Now, what you do need to know, and here's where I don't necessarily think that being held back benefits you.
Mm.
The decision to hold a child back is valuable if you have a child that is somewhere close to or at level. Okay, but if they're at level, there's no reason to hold them back. But if they're close to it, then repeating the grade might help. But if your child is 3, 4, 5 grade levels behind, repeating that same grade isn't going to help them. It's just going to make them more frustrated and embarrassed because they're in class with kids that are actually below them. So, but that is not something that the school is going to do. So if your child, I mean, parents need to be looking at their kids' grades. You know, they're posted. If your teacher's grades are not posted, then you need to call the school and say, you know, I've gone on Aries, I've gone on Parent View, I've looked and my child's grades are not posted. I don't know where my child sits. You can look at that at midnight. There's no excuse. You can look at it 2 a.m. There's no excuse that you as a parent can't look at where your child is as far as grades are concerned. So, but being held back, that is a decision of the parent. And many parents, I think, just don't know that that's an option. It is certainly an option, but understand that having your child repeat, they are literally repeating the very class that they were not able to pass then. And it may not be that they just weren't able to pass that class. It may be more serious in that they can't read or they can't write, spell, you know, they're writing their letters and things backwards. So it may be more systemic. And therefore, I would say, go to your school and find out if there's after school tutoring. Find out if there's, you know, put your child in summer school, make sure they're taking academic classes. They can make those classes and those units up. So there's lots of things you can do. There's alternative schools that they can go to for the summer, and they can do packets and make those units up and then go back. So there's lots of options for parents. They just have to become more educated about the needs of their children. I would like to believe that most parents want to see their children be successful and in fact do better than they did. I know that's how my parents were. I know that your parents were probably the same way. And so it's my guess that the majority of parents all feel that way as well. As far as my Hispanic parents, I'm just going to say to you, there is a thing called Google Translate. So you can copy. If you don't know how, ask your child. I promise you, if they don't know anything else, they know their way around a computer. Have them copy whatever the writing is, whatever the text is, and slip it into Google Translate, and it will translate it to Spanish so you'll know what it says. Most school items do come in both English and Spanish, but sometimes it doesn't. And in order for you to learn what you need to know and get access to the information you have, if it's a matter of language, then, you know, do what you need to translate so that you can understand in your own language what it is that is happening with your child. Parents have got to start to speak up. Parents have got to start to demand, because if you don't demand, this broken system will remain broken. Because it's just like, it's like kicking the dog and the dog not saying anything and dog not biting you. But until that dog bites you, change will happen, right? You won't kick it anymore. So it's the same thing. We're being kicked, and we're continuously being kicked, and we're just accepting the kicks. We need to kick back. We need to stand back and say, no more. My children deserve to have an education. I can't have my child getting to his senior year in high school or her senior year in high school not knowing how to read, not knowing how to write. How are they going to be prepared for any type of employment? And employment is changing. They're automating things. If it's automated, they don't have a need for you to be at McDonald's at the counter. They don't have a need for you to be in Walmart doing a cashier. If you've seen it right now in your own life. You go to the bank, they got ATMs that will do what the teller used to do. You go into a Walmart, they've got registers that you can just go and cash out your own thing and bag your own groceries. They've even got it in the grocery store. And, you know, and McDonald's has a system where you can do it. You can even go to bars, and bars, you can pick the drink you want, and there's a system that will do it. They don't even need bartenders. So what is going to be the outlook for your child when they get out of high school? That getting a management job or getting a job after high school, that's going away. It's going away. And if you're not able and equipped to get into college, it's going to be a really tough situation for many of our children. So it starts now. I just beg of parents, please get involved. Start asking questions. Go up to your school. Those principals and those administrators, they have to answer to you. Your tax dollars require your district, your superintendents, your principals, and your vice principals to answer to you.
Yes.
You have that right.
Yes.
So use it.
Yes. And that's a key point. A lot of parents don't realize the resources that are available at the school, even down to learning Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint. A lot of parents, what I noticed a few years back when William was in school, elementary school, a lot of parents, didn't even know how to use the computer in a way where you need to write a report or send an email or basic things. And there's a disconnect if you cannot do those things and your child is getting assignments using Microsoft Word, Excel, what have you, which they are now. And those resources are available. At least some schools will offer like Saturday classes for parents to go and learn so that they can support their children with their homework.
And another excellent resource for parents and their children is Khan Academy. It's a free resource. It helps you with everything you can possibly think about. And, it can act as your online tutor. I mean, it really is a great resource for both parents and teachers. But I will say, also in defense of parents, that a lot of times our parents may not have the education. They may not know. Maybe there's illiteracy in their household as an adult. There's adult illiteracy. That's another big thing. That's something on my plate that I want to attack. I know that there's many adults that can't necessarily read. And so, they feel like they're helpless and unable to help their children. But you know what? As long as you have a voice and breath in your body, you can speak and say what it is you need. Let your school know they have resources. They're not readily sharing it because, they send it out there and it may fall on deaf ears. So now you need to ask for it, but it's nothing for you to ask. And if you don't know who to ask, go to your school, go to the principal. You can request a meeting with the principal and share your concerns. Let them know my child's not reading at grade level. What are you guys going to do about it? What can I do at home? How can I help my child? Can you send some packets that my child can practice with? And then you mentioned video games. Moms, dads, you know what? I know these kids get on your nerves at times, but just because you got them locked in the room and that gives you a break, trust me, those video games are having impact with their mind. These kids are becoming disrespectful. They're cursing like sailors, girls and boys. It's altering their thinking. It's altering their morals and their values. You're allowing these games and these television programs to raise your children. And I'm just going to say, that needs to change. We've got to get that where we can take this back and let our children know that they are children, that we value them, that we love them, and we want to see them be successful. But the more we continue to kind of put them on autopilot, they are going to ruin themselves because they don't know what they're doing. They're kids.
Better. Yeah,
they are children.
Yes, they don't know any better. And the video industry is not really concerned about their education. They're concerned about making dollars. And so that's a whole problem. I mean, it's entertaining, but it's overtaken, the education and the time that kids need to spend studying and learning and reading, which, that is a disconnect for me as well, because you can read a game and navigate through a computer game, but you can't read, your book.
Right.
And
And,
so,
and and the child can
yeah,
start with picture books. All you want to do is unlock the imagination. You can start with literally picture books where it's just pictures and the kid can
and
say
talk it
what
out.
they think is happening in the story.
Hmm.
That's actually a reading technique. So get them picture books, let them finger through and have them just tell you what they see on the picture, and have them name the characters, have them do those things. That will get them started for reading. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
what grade they are. And again, if they're doing it at home, it's a safe space. It's not
yeah,
like they're in front of other classmates and have to be embarrassed because they can't read. It has to be a safe space. And become your teacher's friend.
yes,
Become your teacher's
yes,
friend. Get to know your teachers.
yes,
Get to
yes,
know who you have released your children to. You need
yes,
to know who is teaching your children so
absolutely.
that you can, once you have a relationship with that teacher, teachers want parent relationships. We
Yes,
want parents that want to help us help their children because
yeah,
we can't do this job by ourselves. We can teach them so much for however long we have them, but when they go home, if it's not being reinforced, then they just come back the next day and we're starting all over again.
right.
So, we got to work together. Again, it takes a village to
Yes.
raise a child.
Yes, it does. And definitely good point. Get to know your teachers. That's very important. That is on the first day, every chance you can have a conversation with your child's teacher. Even if it's hi, how are you doing? Anything, anytime you can volunteer time.
Yes.
Um, that is, I can't tell you how impactful that is, not only for yourself, but for your own child to see you come into the classroom and help out the teacher. It's dynamic.
It
And
tells the child that you care, that they
yes,
matter. And parents, you need to know kids want boundaries. Kids want to know that they matter. They
yes,
want to know that you do think about what's going on with them. If you're not looking at their grades, why would you think they care about their grades? You don't care, so why should they? So
yes,
yeah, it's huge. You're right. It speaks volumes. Not and it speaks volumes to the teacher because now you put that teacher on notice.
right.
Look, I'm here. I'm an involved parent. I want to know what's going on. So you better do your job.
Yes,
And I'm not trying to make it threatening because I am a teacher, but I want parents to call me on the carpet if you have a problem. Let me know. Real quick, I have a story where a parent we were talking about the Roman Empire and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And I was asking the kids, this was online, virtual. I had asked the children, hey, what are some of the things you see today that are kind of like what we saw in the Roman Empire? So one of the things was uprisings with the citizens where they were, picketing and things of that sort. I said, well, where do you see that today? And of course, the kids said Black Lives Matter. So I was like, absolutely, Black Lives Matter. Well, the parent heard me say that and thought I was teaching on Black Lives Matter. I was teaching on the fall of the Roman Empire. I was making a connection to what was going on today to what had happened in the past.
right.
But
And
the parent was extremely upset because she thought that that's what I was teaching them. And this was a biracial child, but she felt like that was a conversation that she should have with her child and not with me. She spoke up. I have a great appreciation for you doing that, but I did have to at least correct her and let her know that isn't what my intent was. That isn't what we were doing. Here's what the lesson was. You caught a piece in passing. Let me give you some context. But
right.
we became really close advocates and we worked together to support her child. And
Yes,
that's what needs to happen.
yes,
You may hear it wrong. That's okay. Call us on the carpet. You wouldn't sit in
right,
church and let the pastor say whatever he wanted to say and
right.
then go amen. If the pastor's saying something you don't agree with, you don't say amen. Same thing. If you see a parent doing, if you see a teacher doing something you don't like, speak up. That
Yes,
child is yours. We
yes,
only have them for a few hours. That child belongs to you. And
yes,
so you need to feel good about who you have your children with. And you can request for your child to go to another teacher if you don't like the relationship your child has with that teacher or with you. you can
Yes.
request to change it.
Yes.
So,
And because there are sometimes there is conflict or personality differences between children and teachers. And it doesn't mean that the teacher doesn't like your kid or any of that. They're people too, and sometimes it's just a clash. And so, uh, if you can notice that and talk to the teacher about it, or really the key is communicating. Um, I think that, like you said, being a friend to your teacher or just having that communication there, letting that teacher know, hey, I'm here. If my son acts out of line, if there's something that of concern, as far as he's not doing his work or he's doing an awesome job, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. Here's my phone number. I'm here. Call me. Um, that also too lets the teacher know that, hey, this parent is concerned. Um, you again, to reiterate your point, you can't just send your kids off to school and let them just go on their merry way and not be involved as to what's happening. Talking to them about their day, what did they learn? My kids used to get tired of me asking every single day, how was your day today? What did you guys do? What did you talk about? What did you learn? And sometimes they would try to give me the same, oh, we learned the same as yesterday. Well, what was that? You can't, even if it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes to dedicate, because I understand, I'm sure you do. We worked, single mother, driving kids to school, driving them to, this activity, that activity. So it's not like we don't understand the time factor and the fact that you're tired. But that little 10 minutes, just honing in on them and making sure that they're on point, with whatever it is. Are there any projects? Did you receive any papers or anything that I need to look at? Anything I need to sign? I had to train one of my boys about, giving me an assignment or a project where he needed items for that project the day before or the week before. Like, when you get that project, tell me so we can go right tomorrow and start getting the tools that you need, the crafts or whatever it is, so that we can start working on planning, showing the kids how to plan out their assignments. And that way they're not so rushed.
right, right.
So
And boys tend to be more forgetful than girls. Girls tend to be kind of on that most of the time, but boys tend to be more forgetful. And parents, yes, you are going to have to ask your boys. You're going to have to ask your girls. Ask them, what have you done? What do you have going? Is there something I need to ask? Those things? Those are all very important things, because we send notes. Kids lose notes. They put them in their backpack. They forget they're there. Teacher, when the child comes back, we say, did you get the note from your mom? Oh, I forgot to give them to her. Could you try to give them to them? Yeah, but they go home, they get on the bus, they're playing with kids, they're talking, they go in their room, they get on the video game, and they forget about you. So
right.
You have to be proactive here, parents.
Yeah.
These kids can't raise themselves. And
Right.
one other thing, when you were talking, I just want to remind the parents, we're not babysitters.
Right.
Okay. We are not your child's absentee parent. We are teachers, and our job is to teach your child the information that they need to get to the next level.
Right.
Now, myself, I love each and every one of my children. I don't care how good or challenging they may be. I love each and every one of them, and my goal is to make every one of them a success. I don't care where they are in their academics. My goal is at the end of the day that they have learned and that they can talk the talk and walk the walk and be able to
Yes.
go into that next level, not fearing.
Yes.
And that's what I try to do. But I'm one in a million teachers. And
Yes.
I know there's many more like me, even better. But understand this, mom and dad, it's you that needs to come to the forefront and help out. Because
Yes.
I got to tell you, we cannot do this by ourselves. We
Yes.
just can't. As much as we want to, we don't have magic wands, but if we can work together, if you can join a PTA, if you can ask if the PTA is recorded, everything's virtual now. Find out if it's recorded. Ask for it to be recorded. Come to the school site councils.
Yes.
Join that. There will be people that look like you. They have an African American school site council. They have a Latino school site council. So they've got, and they have a regular parent school site council that everybody can go to. I mean, they have all different ones. We want to support your children. Make
Yes.
sure you participate and help us out because we want the best for your kids.
Wow, that's awesome. And that's very true. I know that you do. I know that the dedication definitely, every teacher that I know is committed to their job. They're committed to their mission. And when they feel overwhelmed or, that they're not being supportive, that's a problem. And as we can talk about this is a subject that we can talk about all day. But as we move forward, let me just ask you real quick because we are getting short on time. There's so much information. It's so valuable. I know that people watching are taking all of this in, and I know it's helping somebody. But real quick, do you think that the education system has become political?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We to the point where schools, kids will fight and should technically be suspended, and they may try to work something else so that the child can have his butt in a seat. That's money. Schools get paid on butts in seat. So when your child is absent or suspended, they're losing money. Now we
Mm,
can recoup that money by a Saturday school. And so it's important you do that. It allows your child, not only is it going to help the school, which you need it, because if the school didn't have the money and they close, now what are you going to have to do? Take your child further. So it's important that your child is there. So don't misunderstand, but it is about money. And if your child is going to miss school, take them to Saturday school if your school has it, because they can then recover the work they missed so that they can still stay on track. So that's the
mhm.
goal there. Although, it's a twofold goal. They are able to recover the money for the child not being there on the regular school day, but at the
Mhm.
same time, your child can recoup what they missed in that instructional day. So it works together. Like I said, it's a village. We work together. But I do think
Yes.
that it has become political. I think that a lot of it is, optics. You have people opening up new centers and things that they have committed to certain programs. They've got the social emotional learning. Schools are putting in these big programs to help address mental health, and all of that's great. But, you know, it becomes more about saying we have these things than it does about how are we meeting the needs of the children. And frankly, I just have to say this, if I were running the world, children would not be taking science, they wouldn't be taking social studies, they wouldn't be taking art, they wouldn't be taking music, they wouldn't be taking anything but math, reading, and writing, because we have lost so much and our children are so far behind. We
Yes.
need to be bringing them back to the basics and getting the United States to being a leader, because right now we are way down in the bottom with third world countries when it
Mhm.
comes to education.
Yes.
And I personally, if I ruled the world, if I ruled the United States,
Mhm.
that is what we would be doing. Children would only be learning to read, write, and do arithmetic because
Wow.
we cannot do it today.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's a good point. I would agree with you up until I think that we still kids need to learn music. I think they
Oh,
do
no,
need to
they
learn,
do, but I
you
don't think that
know,
that's an immediate need. I think the immediate need is our reading, right? Because if you can't read,
yeah,
write, or spell, um, you're, as I said, joblessness,
yes,
homelessness, prison. Parents, remember
yes.
that joblessness, homelessness, prison. You don't
Mm,
want your child there. We don't want your
no,
child there. Work with your kids.
yes. Wow. Awesome, awesome discussion, Van. Last question before we uh, end our interview today. You've given our parents a lot of helpful tips as to what they can do. Hopefully, this will reach, inner city kids, because we have um, kids in the inner city going to school. Not all the kids in inner city are doing bad, and they can read, but resources are not there. um Wi-Fi and simple things that kids need, to be in today's technology world. um what's your suggestion on that? Like, how do we, for lower income communities, you have kids that are dynamic, they can be whatever they want to be, but if those resources aren't in that community, what is an idea? What should we do as a village to say, hey, we need more resources, we need more books in our schools, we need more learning tools in our schools to help our children, because something is keeping them in this bubble where, like you said, it's systematic. But how do we as a village resist that and make change?
That's a loaded question. It's a great question. When it comes to resources, everything is about money. Your schools that are located in really great or high tax districts, they're going to have more resources, and those that are in lower tax districts are going to have less resources. You mentioned internet. One thing I've noticed is kids have phones better than mine, because I'm not that big on phones. They've got phones better than I. They've got iPhones, the latest iPhones. I would say to you, make sure your child has a mobile, what do you call those, hotspot, and let them use the hotspot. They can use their hotspot to get on to the computer. So there is that available. Schools have those resources available. You can ask your school to make sure your child's Chromebook has a hotspot so that they have access to the internet. They've made sure to have that for the virtual environment. So those resources are still there. So you can ask for that if you're not having it. If your child tells you that they don't have it, you can go over into the little corner there, click on the little thing that looks like an internet icon, and you can see there's a choice for hotspot. If it's there, click on it and tell your kid, and have them do their work that way. That's one of the things. There are free resources out there. I will tell you, teachers pay teachers, teachers use it, but parents can use it. They're nominal fees. If there's different subjects, matters, and things that you want to help your kids, they've got different packets and things that you can have to support your child. There's Teachnology is a free resource. They have different worksheets that you can print out and have your child work on, because they're usually PDFs, so you can't really type on a PDF, but there's a thing called Cami that will allow you to convert your PDF to a Word document, so your child could actually access a document. There's also education.com. I love them. These are ones that I personally, as a teacher, use. They have free resources as well. They'll let you do a free trial for a number of days, and then they want you to pay for it, but it's really nominal. But I know sometimes I'm not in everyone's pocketbook. I know sometimes that can't happen. But all you have to do is Google free teaching resources for elementary school student, middle school student, high school student, and they will come up. A lot of them are leveled, meaning based on the level that your child is at, and you can, work to build them up. and give them the packets. They, you know, some of them it's just like the letter, working on that one letter and different words that start with that letter. That's a great way to get started. But those are the things. And ask your teachers. Lots of your teachers have had, you know, many of them, especially if you're in middle school or elementary school, they have resources and papers. They can create packets for you. Many of them are willing to do that because they want to see your kid reading. So those are the kinds of things that I would recommend doing in you know, in the interim. And then, like I said, Screencastify is free. You can use that for your children to record, to practice, and then they can replay it and hear themselves speaking. Also, children have extensions that they can put on their computer, Chrome extensions, things like text to speech and speech to text, where the child can speak into the computer, it'll type it for them. I like that as a tool only. I don't want that to be the crutch and that they use that forever, but at least they can see it being typed correctly. Text to speech reads it to them. I'm okay with that as a tool, but I don't want that to become the crutch, because it doesn't help the child it doesn't help them learn to read, but it will help them to at least have it read to them so that they can try to understand. And if they're following along, they can pick up on the words and they can just practice it over and over. So those are things that you can do right now, readily available. If you have a dyslexic child, there's a Chrome extension. Check extensions. The extensions, they have lots of Chrome extensions. They're free, that you can download onto your child's computer that will help support them while they're going through their academic career.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. You have just really helped us all with just a lot of valuable information. I'm sure that our parents listening are better equipped after listening to us today. I'm sure that we're going to make some impacts somewhere across this country. Again, education is the key. We cannot move away from this. We can't, you know, what's happening to our children is it's a bad thing. And for those of you, if you don't have kids, if you have nieces and nephews, or any child in your family, you know, tell their parents to pay attention to what's happening within those kids' schools, because it's not all the same. Some schools the kids are learning more than other schools. It's not across the board. And you want your child to have the best education. You want your child to be the best equipped for the next grade level for success. So absolutely. With that, I thank you so much for your time today, being a guest on the show. You've really told us some information that, you know, me personally, my kids are grown, so I'm not really involved, but I know that it's important. You know, I watch the news just like everyone else. I see what's going on. There's a lot of violence out there, a lot of meanness out there, and our kids are just kind of dangling, trying to figure out their own lives within their schools, and they need help. So really appreciate you, Ms. V. Like to welcome you back on the show in the near future when you have some time. And you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.